All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. My name is Keith Perigin. I'm Superintendent of Schools in Bristol, Virginia, and I also serve as the president of the Coalition of Small and Rural Schools of Virginia. Our coalition, we represent 80 school divisions across the Commonwealth, and we have school divisions in every single superintendent study region across the state. We work tirelessly to try to advocate for the special needs that we believe small and rural school divisions have. One of those issues being school infrastructure. Obviously, I think we all are very aware of the issues in Virginia regarding school infrastructure, but we also know that it is a national issue that affects rural schools across the nation. Along those lines, I would like to introduce to you my good friend and the executive director of the National Rural Education Association to bring some regards to you this morning, Alan Pratt.
Hey, Keith, thank you for allowing me to be a part again. It's kind of hard to believe it was a year ago that we were doing the same thing on the COVID and meeting in June. So I want to thank the coalition for their membership. And I just kind of want to put this out that, in sending this information out to other state affiliates about the infrastructure, we had a lot of response back on, hey, this is important. This is why we need to keep pushing to help our rural schools and communities, because our schools are the hub of the community and their infrastructure and their well-being is vital. So thanks again for being with us today, and I look forward to hearing from everyone.
All right, Dr. Pratt, thank you for your support. And I know that Alan and all of our state affiliates are working hard at the federal level to advocate for funding for school infrastructure and other rural needs. I'd also like to take just a minute to introduce our board of directors. I'm sure most on the call know these folks, but I'll start out in Region 1. Our representative from Region 1 is Sabrina Sims. She's a superintendent in Surrey County. In Region 2, from Northampton County, we have Eddie Lawrence. In Region 3, from Middlesex County, Superintendent Pete Gretz. In Region 4, from Orange County, our representative is Cecil Sneed. In Region 5, from Fluvanna County, Chuck Winkler is our board rep. In Region 6, Jeanette Warwick from Craig County. I represent Region 7. I'm the superintendent here, as I said, in Bristol. And in Region 8, Christy Somerville Majed is superintendent in Brunswick County. I would like to take just one moment. Our coalition has been in existence for a little over 4 years now. And from the very beginning, Chuck Winkler has served as one of our boards of directors. He was a founding member of the coalition. And I know that many of us are very jealous of Chuck because Chuck is working not only his last days, but probably some of his last hours in Fluvanna County. So Chuck, I am going to send you via email this nice plaque recognizing your service to the coalition. And on top of that, Chuck, I appreciate not only your leadership, but your friendship. I think if you could describe Chuck with just one word, Chuck is truly a friend to all, not just rural superintendents, but superintendents across the Commonwealth. Chuck, if you want to say some parting words, we'd love to hear it.
Keith, thank you. I'm humbled by that introduction, and I concur. I'm grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful for my colleagues, all the support that I've received in my years here in Fluvanna and even prior. I know many of you from my tenure in Orange as well. And it's been wonderful working with you all. I appreciate all the support out today from outside organizations to help out COSAR move forward, move the school systems of the Commonwealth forward into the future. It's been a pleasure working with you all. I hope to stay in touch. I hope not to be a stranger. I wish you all the best and looking forward to the day's activities. Thank you all. It's good to see you all from a virtual platform. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. Thank you.
A virtual round of applause for our good friend, Chuck Winkler.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just to make sure that we keep that rural advocacy going in Fluvanna County, it's recent. You probably are aware that Pete Gretz from Middlesex will become the superintendent in Fluvanna. We know Chuck. We know Pete will have huge shoes to fill when he makes that transition. I'd also like to recognize some very special guests that we have in attendance today. We have over 150 folks who are signed up for our summit. And so we're very excited about that participation, but want to acknowledge some of our special guests. We have several members of the Virginia General Assembly and their staffs that are joining us today. I think it's very important to have them as part of this conversation so they know exactly what it is that we're dealing with in our rural communities. So we appreciate all of our Virginia General Assembly members, and we'll hear from some of those as part of our first panel discussion this morning. We also have Zach Robbins from House Appropriations staff and Tyler Williams from Senate Finance. Those are two very important folks that are part of the budget development process. So we're glad that they're here to hear about the things that we have going on in rural Virginia. We also have Virginia Board of Education President Dan Gecker with us today, and Virginia Board of Education member Dr. Pam Davis-Vall. We also have several members of the media who have written extensively on this topic. We appreciate their coverage and keeping this on the forefront, and we're glad that those members of the media can be with us here today. We also have, in addition to school superintendents and central office staff, we have many school board members and members of boards of supervisors and city councils. We would like to welcome all of those guests here with us today. Ben Kaiser and his excellent staff at VASS, the Virginia Association of School Superintendents, is here with us. Gina Patterson and her staff from VSBA are also represented today. We are creating some really unique partnerships with some other organizations. Jeremy Bennett from the Virginia Association of Counties is here with us today, and also staff members from the Virginia Municipal League and Virginia's First Cities. Even though they're not school related, we know that they are, our counties and our cities are a part of our funding source, and it's important to have them as part of that conversation today as well. We also are very grateful to the folks over at Virginia Ed Strategies for doing the legwork behind making this conference run as far as the format goes. And so big thanks to Amanda Adams and Jennifer Stevens and the staff there at Virginia Ed Strategies. We also have some folks from the League of Women Voters from Washington County, Virginia and Montgomery County. We are partnering with them to do a study on educational equity funding. And we're glad to have members of the League of Women Voters here with us today to learn about school infrastructure. Obviously, we want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Without our sponsors, this summit would not be possible. I'll just briefly go over our sponsors. You'll hear from some of them later today. Big thank you to Skanska and Sun Tribe Solar, Amerisco, Mosley Architects, Curriculum Associates, Vacor, Forecast 5 Analytics, Thompson and Litton Architects, Powell Valley National Bank, ZMM Architects, Benefit Plan Administrators, Train, Virginia Lottery. And then also our level 4 sponsors, you will hear from them later today. And you'll also see some of their commercials. Again, that's Benefit Plan Administrators, Edgenuity, ABM Building Services, J.A. Street General Contractor, Ballard Construction, Air Mechanical Solutions, and Branch Builds. And we'd also like to give a shout out. You'll actually hear a presentation from our title sponsor, which is ESG Energy Systems Group. So we're very thankful to have all of our sponsors here with us today, but also to have their support for the Coalition of Small and Rural Schools of Virginia. We also have with us today some faculty from the rural education departments at Virginia Tech, the University of Virginia, and even as far away as the University of California at Berkeley. We also have guests today from the New Hampshire Department of Education and representatives from tribal nation schools in Arizona, when that really, I think that really signifies the coast to coast impact this issue is having on rural school divisions. You know, we've known for a long time that school infrastructure in Virginia is really in bad shape. Later today, you'll actually hear from our state superintendent, James Lane, that the conditions of our schools are actually worse than many of us thought, especially in rural Virginia. With an influx of federal dollars like nothing that I've ever experienced, and I assume that the same is true for you, and bipartisan support for this issue in our General Assembly, we actually have a moonshot moment to make decisions that affect budget and policy that will have a multi-generational impact. As we continue to build on the current momentum, it is our hope that today's summit provides the fuel to ignite a sonic infrastructure boom that will make learning environments equitable in every zip code in Virginia. But we can't stop with today's summit. We must continue to remind the General Assembly and the administration how much rural students deserve equitable learning environments. The Coalition of Small and Rural Schools of Virginia is pleased to announce that we have already began to plan the next launch of our work towards this moonshot moment. In partnership with the Virginia Association of School Superintendents, the Virginia School Boards Association, the Virginia Association of Counties, the Virginia Municipal League, and Virginia First Cities, the Coalition of Small and Rural Schools will be hosting a Crumbling Schools tour. In this tour, we will tour schools in every region in the Commonwealth. You see the schools that we already have online. We just received word that in Region 6, Craig County is going to host that tour, and we're working on a really unique partnership in Region 1 that will tie rural and urban school needs and infrastructure needs together. I hope that you'll be able to mark your calendar to attend these events, invite members of the General Assembly, the media, boards of supervisors, and city councils, because it's easy for us to talk about the conditions of our schools, but it's much different whenever you see our schools and see the conditions they're in. Over the last month, as the primaries have been going on in Virginia, we have had many state leaders tour schools in Bristol, and I think to a person, everybody that toured the schools were completely shocked when they saw the conditions that our students go to every single day. And so we're excited that Ballard Construction will be sponsoring our tour in Region 1. ABM will be sponsoring the tour in Northampton. Ballard Construction will also be sponsoring the tour that we have in Region 3 with King and Queen. Branch Builds will be going to Luray, Virginia to sponsor a tour there at Luray Elementary. Train will be sponsoring a tour at Waynesboro High School in Region 5. Train is also sponsoring the tour in Craig County. ZMM Architects will be hosting a tour at Radford High School. And then finally, Branch Builds will be hosting a tour at Halifax County High School in South Boston, Virginia. Our school infrastructure needs are all across the Commonwealth in rural and urban school divisions. And I think it's very important that our legislators, our media, our boards of supervisors, and city councils are aware of the conditions that our teachers teach in and that our students learn in. And so with that, perfect timing, it is 9:15. At this time, I'm going to turn the podium over to Sherry Brown from J.A. Street General Contractors, and she will tell us a little bit about J.A. Street and introduce our moderator, Dr. Cash. I will tell you that Senator McClellan had a last-minute conflict come up. She's going to try to join us late, but we, Delegate Hurst, Delegate O'Quinn, and Senator Donovan should be on the call with us. But anyway, I'm turning the podium over to you, Sherry. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Good morning, everybody. I'm Sherry Brown with J.A. Street and Associates. We're a general contractor in Northeast Tennessee. We've been providing service to the greater Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia area for about 40 years. We think we've got a pretty firm grasp on our role in the educational industry. That's one, to continue to partner with school systems to build or renovate buildings to provide awesome learning environments for students of all ages. And two, to continue to be a very strong supporter of work-based learning. We're thrilled to be part of the summit today, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Cash to you. Dr. Cash has an undergraduate degree in mathematics and a master's degree in guidance and counseling, both from the University of South Alabama. Her educational specialist degree from George Washington University in administration and supervision, and her doctorate from Virginia Tech in educational leadership. Her dissertation and more recent research have addressed the relationship between building condition and student outcomes. Dr. Cash is currently a clinical professor for Virginia Tech School of Education and continues to pursue research on educational facility topics. Dr. Cash.
Thank you, Sherry. So let me introduce to you our panelists for today's discussion on school construction and modernization. First, we have Delegate Israel O'Quinn, who represents the 5th District in the Virginia House of Delegates. He's a staunch advocate for economic growth and opportunity, particularly for Southwest Virginia students. His committee assignments include labor and commerce and privileges and elections. As you just heard, Senator McClellan may be joining us a little late, but let me introduce her just in case she gets here before this discussion is over. She's earned a reputation as an effective constituent services-oriented legislator, representing the greater Richmond area for 11 years in the House of Delegates and 4 years in the state Senate. She serves as vice chair of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, leading legislative efforts for civil rights and equity. She also serves on a number of state commissions, boards, and councils. As chair of the Virginia Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Commission, she promotes Dr. King's legacy and continues his work, particularly racial healing, economic and social justice, and community engagement. She's the chair of the School Modernization and Construction Commission. Delegate Chris Hurst fights tirelessly to increase access to and resources for mental health care and is an advocate for quality and affordable schools with adequately paid teachers. He has fought to bring jobs to the 12th District and is a key member of the Commission on School Construction and Modernization. And Senator Siobhan Donovan is a native of Norfolk, and she was educated at Randolph-Macon Women's College, the University of Virginia, and Eastern Virginia Medical School. She's an obstetrician and gynecologist and has been a member of the Virginia Senate since 2016. She worked collaboratively with the Coalition of Small and Rural Schools to ensure the language of SB 1303 gave school divisions more flexibility, and that was related to in-person learning options for parents. So now let's start the discussion in the panel. And as a reminder, this discussion is limited to school construction and modernization. So for the first question, members of the panel, in recent interviews with over 25% of our school division superintendents, I was excited to learn how they have been able to address some long-term capital needs as part of their COVID-19 mitigation strategies. We know that the United States Education Department allows, but has discouraged the use of funds for new construction. Considering recent guidance and the direction taken by Texas and Kentucky, how would you suggest or influence the Virginia Department of Education regarding providing greater flexibility related to property acquisition and new construction using those ESSER funds?
Dr. Cash, I'm going to interrupt before anybody answers. I just saw Senator McClellan jumped on, so I just want to let you know that she's with us. Great to have you, Senator McClellan.
Super.
Thank you.
So now, who would like to respond first, or shall I just go in order?
Well, I guess I'll start if nobody else jumps in. First of all, good morning. Thank you all for having us to discuss a topic that I know has been on everybody's minds and probably keeping many of you up at night. But that is part of why we put the commission in place to address school construction and modernization, because we know that we need to have a concerted state effort and state direction. And so the commission is in the process of putting together recommendations, some which could require legislation, some which could just be adopted by the Department of Education. But we do have as ex officio members, Superintendent Lane and the chair of the Board of Education. And so I think we are all very creatively looking to see what we can do at the state level consistent with the federal guidelines. And to the extent we need more flexibility from the federal government, working with our partners in Congress and in the Biden-Harris administration and the Federal Department of Education to seek the guidance and the flexibility we need. So we are basically trying not to leave anything on the table. We are looking at all possible options to have our school constructions needs met. And we'll probably get into some of the details of what those needs are, but I think we are just going to do whatever we can to make sure that we are pulling together at the local, state, and national level to make sure every locality is getting the flexibility and the funding they need to meet our school needs.
And we appreciate that outreach to the national level as well. Other comments?
Hey, Carol, it's Delegate O'Quinn. I think the key part of your question is that the U.S. Department of Education has discouraged, but yet allows this for that money for the use of school construction. And I think that's where the crack in the door is, because every state is certainly different. Texas and Kentucky were examples that were used, and they certainly have similarities yet vast differences with Virginia. And there's no doubt that the same is true for all 7 regions across the state. You know, we all have different needs, and having that flexibility is the key. And I think that certainly our superintendents here through the small and rural school divisions know that you know, the people that you're talking to on here today are on board. You know, you don't have to twist our arm. You don't have to convince us. You know, we've been there, we've seen it. And so we're on board. I think the Department of Education also knows that we're on board. But that's where, you know, all the 4 of us that are here today, you know, advocating, and then you all advocating as well. You know, you have a broad reach across the state, you know, to convince legislators that might be on the fence that this really is, as Dr. Perigin said, a moonshot. This is a huge moment for us to be able to capitalize on. And Senator McClellan's right. You know, we cannot allow this door to shut and leave all this on the table, and then, you know, be spending it on you know, things that just don't have the same long-term reach. You know, we're talking about stuff that can help our students for generations to come. You know, stuff that'll help them next year, that's good. But stuff that'll still be helping students 30, 40, 50 years from now is something that we really need to be looking at, because you know, having this kind of money come along is not an everyday occurrence. And anything that we can do to convince the U.S. Department of Education, as well as the Virginia Department of Education, to allow this to go forward, I think is time well spent.
Dr. Cash, as you're waiting for Delegate Hurst to speak up, I'll let you know that Senator / Dr. Donovan got caught up at the hospital, so she may not have heard that question. So we may give her a pass on question number 1, but I know Delegate Hurst is ready to roll with his answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Cash, Dr. Perigin, appreciate the question. I think it's really important that I think about flexibility with the current, you know, now 3rd round of ESSER funds that are going to be coming to states and localities. I think it's important to first note that there are some really good things that have already been happening with ESSER related to construction and renovation. So, you know, HVAC systems and things that have a real tangible effect related to transmission and prevention of COVID. But then also, you know, having some school divisions actually lean into the permissible but discouraged, and finding appropriate ways to actually use, you know, their appropriations. I know in Radford, it is the hope from Superintendent Rob Graham, and speaking to him, that the school board can get approval from City Council and their plan to be able to have a portion of their funding go toward paying for the ongoing renovation at McGarg Elementary School. And so that's, I think, already an application that we've been able to see. And so I think that there is some flexibility that is already there by people who are, you know, going ahead and doing that work. You have to comply with all of those federal regulations. You have to comply with some extra things that we might not otherwise be requiring in Virginia. But if you do that, if you do those things, then I say go for it. But I think it's important to note that when we come into August for the special session and may look at appropriating some of those funds, that still really is a drop in the bucket. So I want to make sure that we get that process right, that we make sure that we have buy-in from everybody in the state, that we can actually appropriate government funds for school construction in meaningful ways, and have that be sort of a down payment then for the longer conversation that I know Senator McClellan and chairing the School Construction and Modernization Commission is talking about already. You know, what are some of the things we used to do in Virginia that we might bring back again? And what are some new things that we can do in Virginia to try and help school divisions with affordability, with things like debt service? You know, all of those things I think now are part of a meaningful conversation that wasn't really with us a few years ago. And so I just want to make sure that as we continue to go along this progression, that we do things thoughtfully and wisely and prudently, you know, so that we can ensure that we have as many options on the table for us in the future too.
Thank you very much, Delegate Hurst. And I appreciate your pointing out that there were some things that were happening prior to the Great Recession that maybe can be readdressed at a later point. As an extension of what you just said and what we've heard before, and perhaps being a bit redundant, let me go to the next question. So you know that in COVID-related funding prior, school divisions did take the opportunity to allocate some of those funds for air quality related equipment and repairs like HVAC and polar ionization and the air filtering systems. However, there are many buildings that are in such bad condition that if you were to do something with those systems, you would be pouring good money after bad. So again, to extend and perhaps for an opportunity for Senator Donovan, what supports would you consider as legislators for major renovation or new construction in the situations where those buildings are in poorer condition?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And I'm sorry I'm late. I hope you can hear me okay. I am absolutely committed to us finding ways to use this essentially $3 billion we've gotten from the federal government in the 3 different disbursements to build new construction. I think it's very clear that we can use it to renovate, but that's not enough. In Henrico alone, we have a lot of outdoor campuses that are very dated and old, and the ability for us to renovate those in any meaningful way is not only just about as expensive as it would be to build new, but it's not sustainable. Renovation is not as sustainable as the new construction now. So I think that I know that there's optimism that as we move forward, the federal government may actually give us more permissibility to use this for new builds. But as I understand it, I've been speaking to the school board on behalf of my locality. And I think that the real snag is that we have to have the construction done by 24. So I'm wondering if we can get those that build our schools, and I have seen rapid school building. My kids went to a private elementary school and they were able to very industriously do a massive renovation that other construction companies told us would take 3 years, and they were able to do it in an extended summer. So I think if we can get some innovation with some of our construction companies, listen, as a doctor and looking at the research, I can tell you, we need to be looking at the outcome metrics. And there's great evidence to show that new school buildings for children improve attendance, they improve test scores, and they improve overall grades. And, we must focus on giving our children the opportunity to have access to the American dream. And a major pillar of that is a high quality K-12 education. And we can't do that if we're in old and decrepit schools. Some of the plans that I've seen from the overreaching kind of research we've done on Virginia and the old buildings, some of the proposals from Southwest where you want to take 3 schools and build 1 new elementary school, we should be making these investments. I think the one-time money from the federal government is a gift, and we ought to be able to invest that as much as we can in new builds. And I think we could have redirected some money this year when there's $3 billion extra dollars from the federal government to cover costs. We gave another $500 million to schools to hold them harmless for children who were no longer attending. We could have used that federal money for that and put that $500 million into school construction. So I think there's lots of things we can do here. The key is making the point that school construction is not a luxury, that it is an absolute necessity. And if we want the outcomes that we're asking our K-12 education to provide us, we have to be a part of that solution with buildings.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate your pointing out the attendance issues, and many of those are related to air quality. So some things have been mitigated, but there are so many more to come. Other representatives, senators, delegates?
Yeah, first, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Israel. Okay.
Go ahead.
First, I just want to remind first, let's scope the problem for a minute. Unfortunately, $3 billion is not enough. And so we are going to have to find a long-term dedicated funding stream from the state level, which we used to provide. And I don't know if you all have received a full copy of the presentation that the Board of Education presented to the commission last week. It's 75 pages. It is worth the read, but just because it gives a history of when the state and the federal government both significantly invested in school construction and modernization. The last really big time was probably during the Depression. If you look at a lot of the schools and you look at the cornerstones, they were put in, thanks to the Work Progress Administration. So if you just look at the capital improvement plans already in place, here's the total scope of what we need. New school construction. Now, this is not for every school that is over 50 years. I think if we were to build and replace a new school for every school over 50 years, that would probably be like $25 billion. But just the ones that the school divisions have identified need to be replaced. That is $3.8 billion. Renovations are $3.3 million. And the problem is because the maintenance was deferred for, in some cases, 20 years, renovating many of those buildings might not be good enough, but for the ones that the maintenance isn't too bad, you can renovate back. That's $3.3 billion. HVAC repair and replacement, which again, the federal government has helped a lot with that, is $623 million. School additions, because many of our schools are overcrowded, $514 million. Roof repair and replacement, which if we don't do, is going to lead to more replacement and renovation needs, $467 million. So those are, I think, the highest priorities, but that's not getting into technology upgrades, electrical and plumbing. And I saw a school, I think, Keith out in, Dr. Farragon out in your area that had some of the original plumbing systems from 1938, sports and playgrounds, grounds and parking lots, safety upgrades and lighting. So this is a huge amount of money. We cannot leave to our local governments. That we're not getting enough from the federal government. We at the state level are going to have to figure out what is the right mix for us to get as much in now upfront for new schools and renovation. And frankly, we're going to need your help prioritizing, because we are not going to be able to meet that full list. And I know when I asked this question at the commission meeting, I got a little bit of pushback. We need help prioritizing, because if we can't fund the entire amount, we need you to tell us what the priorities are. And I think, where we can get new schools and renovations, that's clearly important. HVAC, clearly important. Roof repair, clearly important. But we need your help prioritizing that gigantic price tag.
Delegate O'Quinn?
Yeah, so to get to the heart of your question about what would we support as far as major renovation or new construction, I think the short answer to that is we need to do what needs to be done. Some schools, as Senator McClellan said, need new roofs or this or that. But I think also not replicating what we've already got available, because when you look at what can be done with ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, especially ESSER 2, there were lots of HVAC, air filtration systems that could be and can still be replaced with those funds. And so looking at what's already available through 1 and 2, and then figuring out how we stretch the playing field with 3. And I think then that goes back to the earlier question of how, the U.S. Department of Education might not be crazy about us doing school construction, but they will allow it. Great. That's good enough. And so capitalizing on that and not replicating what we can already do, I think is the way that we stretch this money as far as it can possibly go, because it definitely, you heard the numbers just now. This is expensive stuff. This is not $1 million here or $500,000 there. I mean, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars to really fix this whole problem. And and if you come from a small and rural school division, and in some cases, even if you don't, that your local governments just don't have the ability. I mean, they cannot raise property taxes high enough to cover this shortfall. So the old proverbial saying, if you can't get blood out of a turnip, is really true in this particular case. And so again, I mean, this is a huge opportunity, and making sure that we're not being redundant or replicating things that we can already pay for through other funding mechanisms, I think is key to stretching this out.
And I appreciate your recognition of the challenges at both rural and actually urban systems as well with those costs. Delegate Hurst.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind again that this is going to be an ongoing process. And so it's important for me to think about how do we make sure that we can get these projects done as quickly as possible because of rising construction costs and how delays just cost even more money. But that it's ultimately about trying to have everybody come down at the kitchen table and see, can we afford this large purchase? And how much do we need to borrow in order to make it? And who can we talk to that might be an appropriate lender for us? And so I think that that localities really are going to be challenged to see I respect exactly what Delegate O'Quinn is saying, especially for small and rural schools coalition members. But, Pulaski County was able to do a tax increase in order to pay for a new middle school. Danville may be the fifth to take advantage of the new sales tax, authority that started first with Halifax County and Delegate Edmonds, right? So I think that there's going to be a question that everybody needs to answer of, how much have you been able to do? And we heard the presentation in the School Construction Commission last week that there are metrics that we have available to us to determine not only the local fiscal stress, but also the debt capacity and local regulations on what kinds of debts can be incurred and then at what level. And so I think we want to make sure that we kind of see those things moving forward. And if we do those things and do it in a meaningful way that gets buy-in, then I really think that, okay, the brass tacks here, what could be on the table? Some of the programs that we had in the past that we could bring back, maybe actually doing direct grants that you would apply for from a dedicated state funding source. And then maybe having some ability to use the Commonwealth's AAA bond rating to try and help maybe do things like we did with colleges, universities, being able to help with debt service payments. All right. I mean, I think that if we can make sure that there is a methodology that works, and remember, I love being asked to participate in events from the Coalition for Small and Rural Schools. There are a lot of non-small and rural schools that would love access to the kind of money we're talking about right now. And so I think that we have to make sure that there is a good process where the most in need is able to get what they need and have the Commonwealth be a willing partner for that. But it is going to require, I think now, a huge amount of collaboration with folks in the General Assembly and folks in the money committees as well. And I appreciate Dr. Perigin really doing a great job of having appropriations and Senate Finance staff for this summit here today. We can get a process put together post the special session in August, but we just need everybody to be a willing collaborator in order to get it done.
We've had two students recently at Virginia Tech who have done fiscal equity studies in Virginia, and I think it will be interesting to see their results. In at least one case, they're finding that there's not been any increase in that equity over the last few years. So let's go to the next question, which is moving away from the built facility.
Dr. Cash, before you go to the next question, I would like to make one point that would be an easy advocacy effort for everybody on the call, whether they're from New Hampshire, California, or Virginia. The federal funds that are going to localities have a deadline of spending those dollars by 2026. School federal funds have the deadline of 2024. If we could just get the flexibility to move that deadline for schools to 2026, like it is for localities, that changes the whole game. Sorry to.
Oh, no, that's worth interruptions for. Thank you, Dr. Perigin. While most schools have adequate broadband within their facilities, based on the most recent report, broadband access continues to be an issue throughout the Commonwealth. This unequal access affects students' ability to take best advantage of the one-to-one device initiatives that have been supported by CARES funding. Post-COVID, school divisions are committed to providing a continuous virtual access to those students who have thrived in that environment. But community connectivity is an issue with that option as well. So how might you see the support of these one-time monies or even additional monies to address issues not only in the schools, but also access to school from home, therefore benefiting the greater community as well?
Well, Dr. Cash, I'll start on this one. I'm a member of the Broadband Advisory Council, and we are actively discussing what a package might look like for August that relates to broadband, right? And so on this once in a lifetime kind of opportunity for us to do things once and for all, I think broadband is one of those major issues where we would like to get every connected home and business broadband speeds, hopefully in the next year and a half, 2 years. That's going to require a huge amount of a lift from developing a workforce and getting those contracts executed. But I think the package that's going to be announced that then the legislature will take a look at is going to be substantial, with a capital S. And so that's not only going to help get folks who are in unserved areas right now, but also looking at ways that we can look at affordability too. That now I think has to be a major part of the question. and not necessarily giving subsidies direct to customers and to families, but really figuring out what are meaningful ways that we can actually build better competition that might lead to lower costs for everybody. So I think that we have some really amazing opportunities on the horizon with another kind of moonshot issue in broadband, but one that I also think is really important for folks to remember. As much as the pandemic has illuminated a lot of still chronic problems of getting that last mile service down to the last family, we have in the last 4 years been able to cut the number of people who don't have broadband internet in Virginia in half, from about 450,000 to less than 250,000 now. And so that's a real tremendous achievement. Being able to put $100 million into the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative is really meaningful money to be able to get thousands of people online with each one of these grants that's given in partnership with a private entity and a locality. So we have done a lot of really good work on it. So I would really hope that you would have an expectation from us that we would continue to deliver on that in meaningful ways with big numbers. And then also, the big goal of trying to, in the next 2 years, trying to eliminate this problem for folks, whether it's fiber to the home, fixed wireless. Those are the two main delivery models that can work and be sustainable. But we want to make sure that we eliminate this problem of students not being able to be connected at home to do their work when they leave school. It is a problem that we can solve, and one that I think we can solve here in the next few years.
I almost feel like saying internet is today what electricity was 100 years ago. I don't know that there's a division out there that doesn't have areas that are at least underserved for broadband. So thank you very much. Let's see.
Can I add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so another thing that we have done through the budget that we adopted this year is, and this, you would think we had already done this, but we hadn't. We don't even have a map of which localities are unserved and which are underserved by broadband, defined by the certain speed. And so we did put funding in place and require a mapping process to do that by the end of this year, so that when the telecommunications initiative funding is distributed, it will prioritize those localities that are unserved and then underserved. But we also need to continue to give our localities more flexibility, which again, we've begun to do by not just saying we're going to give funds to those localities that have a private partner, because that might not be the right model for everybody, but working to give our localities more flexibility to say, if you want to have an authority, if you want to have a municipal owned network, let's give you the flexibility to do that. So I think these two really do have to go hand in hand with the school construction and making sure we get broadband infrastructure in place.
Thank you. Senator O'Quinn, or Delegate O'Quinn, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think that anytime you're talking about infrastructure for education, this past year laid bare that broadband is as much educational infrastructure as the actual building, because whether we're in a situation like we've had for the last year with so many kids at home, or whether we're just in a situation where kids need that broadband connectivity to be able to do their homework, that creates a big divide. If you have to go home and do a research project, and you don't have the ability to get online and do the research, it just naturally follows that child is not going to come home with the same grade as the kid with connectivity. And so there's a big disparity there, and that's a whole separate argument that some of us feel very strongly about, particularly in areas that have a lot of the numbers that Delegate Hurst alluded to of folks who don't have that connectivity. But Senator McClellan kind of hit on this, but I think it's just breaking the traditional mold of, here's the one way we have to deploy and offer broadband. This is the only way we can do it. Well, that's just not accurate anymore. We have the projects through the electric utility companies where they're using dark fiber to light up entire localities. We've got space-based internet that's being used in the Lenowisco planning district that has 200 meg capabilities. Used to be a day if you had to connect a satellite, it was a horrible option. And now all of a sudden you've got this crazy fast option that's available. So, likewise, you've already heard this, if you have a municipal broadband authority that is in place and can do this, then we need to use them. Relying on this same old outdated model for delivery of broadband it's just not going to work. And so we have to be able to use everything that's in front of us. There's a lot of things in front of us, and just taking advantage of all of them. And it's going to have to be a big tent of various types of providers that can get in here and offer this service. And I think we're past the point of being able to be picky choosy about exactly how it gets delivered and by whom, and open it up to where if someone has the capacity to do it, we need to let them.
Senator Donovan?
Thank you, Dr. Cash. I'll just reiterate what's been said. We do need to make this a priority, as we would any other essential utility like electricity or phones. It is not just for education, although it's an imperative for education, it's for economic opportunity too, especially people who are in rural areas. There's a lot of online economic opportunity, and they need to be able to have access to that too. So we need to make it a priority. It's an amazing opportunity to have one-time money from the federal government that we can use for that investment. And if we make this a high enough priority, we'll make that investment. But it's not money alone, it's innovation, like everybody's talked about. We need to have innovative ways that we can accomplish this goal and put everything on the table and make sure when we are innovative, we actually make the cost lower, which is how we can get it done in a year or two, is that if we just pull out all the stops and go for it. So I think that's priority, one-time money, innovation. It's a gift. Let's get it done.
Thank you very much. And I have to tell you, after talking to so many superintendents in the last few months, I am convinced that if you want to know who can be innovative and figure out ways to handle things on a dime, they did it. And they and their teachers. And that brings me to the next point, which is that the pandemic has brought many challenges, but it's also allowed us for rapid change in teaching and learning, both in delivery and instructional strategies. Many educators see this as an opportunity to reconfigure schools to accommodate post-pandemic a variety of spaces and space sizes that are flexible and can be transformed throughout the day. So my question then is, how do you see lawmakers supporting these advances post-pandemic? And in other words, how do you envision schooling and lawmakers' support after this?
I'm happy to jump in because I have a lot of thoughts about this. I think something that I hope we're going to pivot and move towards in education is something that I've learned from educators, and that is developing individualized education plans. We really need to be able to focus on what kids' needs are, because they're going to be very diverse as we come back from COVID and online learning. We need to also individualize how we teach them. Children learn in different ways. If we have a robust, and I've been talking about this since I've been in the legislature, if we have a robust platform for education that maybe is not different in every locality, but maybe a centralized state platform like many other states have, that gives teachers the opportunity to, in the classroom, have more ability to individualize education and make it more stimulating for kids. It also makes it an easy pivot for them to transition to home education when that is needed for a snow day or for a pandemic or anything else. So I think we really need to shore up how we do online education, but online education has always been a great opportunity for kids who are high achievers and want to move more rapidly, for kids who have other challenges. So I think not only I think that being able to recreate how we get educational content to children, it easily follows that we can also figure that we can re-innovate how we build schools. Because collaborative learning, some kids may, you guys know this because you're the educators, but I think we ought to take this as an opportunity to rethink how we're doing education and make sure every child, with the gifts and the challenges they have, has the maximal chance to learn, because we all know for many kids, it's not sitting on their butts in a classroom listening to a lecture. So let's innovate. Let's make it all about the kids, each and every one.
Thank you. Let's see, Senator McClellan.
Yeah, so I envision schooling that recognizes the holistic needs of the student and the employees trying to teach the student. And I think we have not, our K-12 schools in a lot of ways are the same as they were 100 years ago. But we know so much more about how brain development works, how trauma and external factors impact a student's ability to learn. the biggest aha for me was, I always theoretically understood the importance of early childhood education. But what really hit it home was when my son started kindergarten, and his teacher told me the biggest change she saw in her 25 years teaching was kindergarten used to be where the soft skills are taught. Now it's not. She could tell on day one which kids had formal early childhood education and which ones didn't. And when 90% of your brain is developed by the time you're 3, and you're not learning the soft skills before you get to kindergarten, you're already, the equity gap's already started. And so I think we need to take a step back and holistically look at how are we making sure that our early learners get the foundation they need to be kindergarten ready. And then also, not only are we focusing on the academics that children need when they come into kindergarten, but all the wraparound services. So making sure that we have counselors and social workers, behavioral health analysts, more assistant principals in the building to provide those wraparound service needs, that we are making sure that they're fed, because they can't learn if they're hungry. So I think we've got to make sure at the state level, when we're thinking about schooling, it is more than just curriculum, that it is the holistic needs of both the students and the entire community in the building, serving and educating those students, and frankly, providing supports in many cases to the parents. Because many of the parents, either because of challenges that they have or a wide variety of factors, aren't in a position to help support the student at home. And where that's the case, we need to help to meet those needs too. So again, just recognizing holistically, this is not just a job for curriculum and teachers, and they walk in the door with everything that happened at home before they ever got there. And you all have got to deal with that in addition to, and so that you can educate them.
And as we talked to people throughout this pandemic, what we heard is teachers were worrying about all of those wraparound services. So thank you for pointing that out. Delegate Hurst?
Yeah, Dr. Cash, I think one of the things that is really important as we try and reimagine or take this as an opportunity to take stock again and maybe do things differently than we have previously relates to school construction. And really seeing if maybe as we think about some additional programs to bring online to help with cost, that we maybe give an extra point or two in the scoring if you are going to be proactive in your planning for interdisciplinary studies, trying to have more opportunities for those spheres for students. And it's something that Radford City Schools has looked at for a long time and would love the ability to put their plans into action for a great interdisciplinary center. But thinking of schools more as community centers, and also schools as places where children are able to work as teams together on projects to try and achieve outcomes, to try and help meet the 5 C's that now are such an important emphasis. And so that's going to mean that maybe we don't, we were talking in the meeting last week about how the open air construction trend of the 70s is now going to be a very expensive fix for us all to try and address now moving forward. So I'm not saying that we necessarily go down a trend or a fad that's going to fade out. But I think the evidence-based practices for interdisciplinary studies is real and is tangible, and is something that I would like to see more school divisions actually be able to implement their ideas rather than just having to leave them on paper.
Well, and I think that's why those flexible spaces that are flexible throughout allow for that opportunity as things change and as students learn differently. Delegate O'Quinn.
I would say this kind of goes to the the whole point of us as legislators being in constant contact and conversation with you as superintendents and educators, and telling us what you envision this sort of new educational delivery model looking like. Because we can sit around in a committee meeting or a study commission and sort of spitball what these things might look like. But you all were there. I mean, on the ground, on the front lines. There were things that you tried during the last year that probably didn't work all that great. There were things you tried in the last year that was just, they were home runs. And You know, there are a lot of things that we do in Virginia that we do really well when it comes to delivering education, and there are things that we do that we can definitely do better. And so, you know, one of the things that I probably despise the most is someone saying, well, we're doing it this way because we've always done it this way. I mean, come on, you know, this is the 21st century. And, you know, and if there's something weird that we've been doing, you know, to like the open air classroom since the 70s, you know, that's a simple example. But if there are things that we're doing that just don't work, but we're doing it because we always have, then we need to, you know, kick that to the curb and figure out a better way to do it. And again, it comes back to flexibility, and what works in one division might not be the exact perfect way to do it in every division. But again, it's that conversation. It's that you know, it's that two-way dialogue so that we understand what you need and are advocating for that when we go to Richmond for what is a relatively short General Assembly session to move the needle.
Thank you. Now I'm going to take the next 2 minutes to say, I know I ask a lot of questions, but I think you came here with a lot of answers. So what did I not ask you that you wanted to answer today? And of course, I'm giving you 2 minutes to do it.
I'll be really
Cash,
quick.
it's okay if we go into the break. We've got a 15-minute break. So while we have them, I know that they may have other engagements, but as long as they want to talk, we'll listen.
Dr. Cash, I think we're at a real breaking point now, and COVID certainly broke a lot of the spirits and hearts of our children. And so student mental health, I think, is something that we have to tangibly figure out solutions for. It is going to be incredibly difficult to do. We have a provider problem. Outside of schools, we have a provider problem inside of schools for counselors. We are changing ratios, but trying to hire those folks is going to take some time. And then also, too, we need to make sure that that children have teams, you know, just like Senator Donovan talked about an IEP being something valuable for every student. You need to have a team to be able to, you know, assess the progress of a child, not only academically, but also emotionally and mentally as well. And so we do need to, as teachers, to be a part of that. And that is asking them to do an additional thing that they shouldn't otherwise in a perfect world have to do. And so, you know, I pledge to try and find ways that we can reduce the burden on teachers to try and improve morale and help with retention. And in exchange for that, we really need to make sure that teachers are buy-in on receiving things like mental health first aid training, that they buy in on wanting to be part of the care team for an individual's overall mental health. But that is something that is going to be critical for us moving forward, especially in rural areas where the access to healthcare services is so difficult to achieve.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in because I'm going to have to get back to patients, but a couple of things along the same line, because I'm a big advocate for this. Number one, I hope you know that I was able to change the state plan this year so that you can now get reimbursed from the federal government from Medicaid for services you provide to children in your school outside of an IEP. The state plan limited it to IEP in the past, but hopefully you can use those extra federal dollars to help you offset some of the cost of wraparound services going forward. You also have the ability to charge a location fee for telemedicine. We can get you psychiatric and mental health telemedicine into your schools, and you can actually overcome the cost of setting up that system by having that site fee being. I believe that we need to use schools as a touch. In medicine, when you have the opportunity to access a population and significantly assess and improve their health, we should use that. And we've always said in the past, oh, schools are schools, they're not healthcare. I think we need to have healthcare in schools. And I think we really need to have subject matter experts there, either remotely or in person, that can do that so teachers can stay the subject matter experts on education. But we all know kids can't learn if we don't meet those needs. There are some significant challenges right now in the way that our MCOs reimburse for those wraparound services. They create obstacles to entry for the kids, and we have the ability to change the state plan and mandate that Medicaid change those expectations so that there are no delays in intervening for kids who have had childhood trauma or maybe have other behavioral issues. So there's a lot we can do even in special session to build on what we've already done. But I think what you're hearing from everybody is we hear you. We need to make sure kids have everything they need to succeed, and schools are a place where we can do that, not through the teachers, but through other people. And we're going to keep finding ways to make sure that we overcome obstacles to providing those services. Thanks, everybody, for having me today.
Thank you.
Well,
Anybody
I'll,
else? Yes,
I'll just say, I know we're running out of time. All I'll say is, communication is key. And I mean, I'll speak for me. I appreciate the communication that I have with our superintendents and principals and educators. And Dr. Perigin and we talk multiple times a week. I'm in a Bristol, Virginia school, you typically several times a month. And I think that's the key, is seeing it for yourself, understanding what it is, and then just the communication again, because, we're going to be in Richmond for just a small handful of days. And even our General Assembly session, one of the fastest in the country. So seeing this beforehand, knowing what we can do to be helpful, agreeing on what we do to stretch the playing field, I think is key, because it's a short period of time that we have to act. And we've been given a golden opportunity to do something tremendous for our students for generations to come. And shame on us if we collectively squander that.
all right. Thank you. Senator McClellan, anything else?
Yes, I just want to end with a thank you. You all have already been tireless advocates, but your voice is needed now more than ever, because some of us have kids in public schools, but not enough. And all of our policy positions are based on what we know and what we see. And so you're our eyes and ears out in the trenches, and we need you to keep up your advocacy. You've done an excellent job. I know you've got a lot on your plate. I know this has been a horrendous, stressful year for all of you. But we do have an opportunity when we're rebuilding to do it in a way that addresses our needs today, and not just recover, back to where we were in March of 2020, because frankly, for many of you, that wasn't good enough. So just please keep it up. My door is always open, and I think you have seen this is a bipartisan issue. This is a rural, urban, suburban issue. So just please keep doing what you're doing.
I thank you very much, all of you, for participating today. And I also want you to know how much the superintendents and the school systems appreciate your support and your acknowledgement of the wraparound services needed for the students who are our future in Virginia. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Cash, thanks for moderating, but especially thank you to Delegate O'Quinn, Delegate Hurst, Senator Donovan, and Senator McClellan. Taking time out of your busy schedule to spend with us. You don't know how much we appreciate it. To all my Virginia friends on the call, all the senators and delegates' email addresses are easily accessible on the website. I encourage you to send out a thank you, because it's very evident that all the senators, delegates, Republicans, and Democrats that were on this call today support the initiative to improve school infrastructure in the Commonwealth, and we need to do everything that we can to support them as they fight for us during the special session and the upcoming regular session. With that, we will now take a 10-minute break. I encourage you to not log off and try to log back on. You probably may have noticed I was feverishly working with Amanda and the team at Virginia Ed Strategies to get everybody logged on at the beginning. I would encourage you just to maybe mute and turn your video off, and we'll see everybody again at 10:15. Thank you.